Of Tuesday, September 24th, 2019. We'll call the meeting to order. I'll just ask if you'll stand and join Deputy Mayor Elmsley in the singing of O Canada, please.
I expect everyone to join in and drown me out. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all our sons command, with glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Yeah, I don't even try. I'd have to be high to hit that high note.
I hurt myself.
Thank you for that, I think. 2.2, if you'll join me, please, in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Item 2.3 is the adoption of the open session agenda. Councillor O'Reilly, I believe you have that. Put your microphone on, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Richardson, that the agenda for the open session of the regular council meeting Tuesday, September 24th be adopted as circulated. Is there any additions or anything?
No, we're good.
Nope. Okay.
Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in anything in today's open session? Seeing none. Notices and information by members of council and staff. I'll start. I have an announcement on Saturday with Councillor O'Reilly and Councillor Ashmore attended. We went up to the plowing match up in Verner to attend the closing ceremonies. There's a bit of a tradition. We were handed off the flag, which gives us the flag for our event next year on October 14th, which will take place at the Lindsay Fairgrounds. I won't speak for the councillors, but it was a gorgeous day. It was a massive event, and certainly going to be, we'll all have to be on our game to host it next year. But I just wanted to show you the flag real quick. If you would, sir. So they did a closing ceremonies. They officially handed the flag off to the city of Kawartha Lakes. I accepted on their behalf, on our behalf as a city, and we're now off to the races. So, all right. Thank you. Anyone else have anything from council they wish to announce? Councillor Seymour Fagan.
Yes, it is Bob Cajun Fall Fair starting this Thursday evening with a crash-up derby, tractor pulls, rides, the whole bit. This year they're also adding a beer tasting tent. So yeah, come on down to Bob Cajun for the Fall Fair.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore.
A couple of items here. Coming up on October 19th, reserve your ticket for the second annual Irish Oktoberfest, which will be held in Downeyville at the Downeyville Hall Saturday, October 19th from 6 o'clock to 11. Admission is $25. And I'd just like to reiterate what the mayor said. It was an awesome day Saturday, just a huge crowd. And I'd like to thank also staff, economic development staff for being there. They put on a very good presentation in that tent, and a lot of work went into that during the week. So special thanks to Kelly Maloney and Rebecca Mustard, and I think Jennifer Johnson. I may have missed one more staff person, but they did an excellent job. So, and looking forward to Lindsay hosting it, Lindsay Exhibition Grounds next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vale?
Thank you. The Accessibility Committee would like to invite everybody to join the Honourable David C. Onley and other special guests on October 23rd for the 2019 Fall Accessibility Forum as they present on various topics surrounding this year's theme, Accessible Education Towards Accessible Employment. Registration closes on October the 1st.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, and through you, on this Friday, September 27th, the Global Climate Action by students will be hosting a rally starting here at the City Hall at 12:30 and heading down to Victoria Park. Also, I want to make note of the Women's Resources holding their Extraordinary Women of Kawartha Lakes on October 17th at the Black Diamond Golf Club in Pontypool.
Thank you. Councillor Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Community Care hosted their annual gala a couple weeks ago, and Mayor Lester and myself were in attendance, and it was a very successful event at the Lindsay Armories. Farm Fest will be on Saturday, October 6th, going from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Adults $5, children will be free. The junior hockey season has started once again. The Lindsay Muskies are playing, and the Little Britain Merchants open their season this Saturday night in Little Britain. There's a Boots and Bling events, a fundraiser for the Boys and Girls Club in Lindsay. It is, when is it? Friday, October the 4th at the Victoria Park Armories, and featuring many different events. And the Lindsay Central Exhibition just concluded. It was another very successful week and great weather, and I believe there's hopefully over 40,000 attended again. So. And just to add further to Mayor Letham, it was a great day and a great week for the, it's going to be a very big responsibility for the City of Kawartha Lakes putting on the International Plowing Match next year. So be more to come.
Great. Thank you. Any other members of council? Seeing none. Members of staff, did you have?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, through you, if I could ask our Acting Deputy Paramedic Chief Johnson just to give a very quick update or announcement with respect to the Community Paramedicine Pilot Project.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. You recall I was here last week providing a brief update on the Community Paramedic Pilot, which would see paramedics responding to high-risk discharge patients that were discharged from the Ross Memorial. And that program successfully launched yesterday. We want to thank the media department for being on site with us. The program will run from now until the third week of December, so we'll finish up just before Christmas. Be back in January to provide you all an update and a higher level overview of how that program made out. But we were very energized this morning to open our inbox and see a very large stack of requests for paramedic service from the Ross Memorial to better support these elderly patients that were being discharged from home and were expected to return to the hospital. So hopefully a more proactive strategy to divert those patients from the Emerge department. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Look forward to hearing the results. Any other members of staff? Seeing none. We'll move into item 5, which is council minutes. I need a motion that the minutes of the August 13th regular council meeting, September 5th, special council meeting, September 17th, special council meeting, and September 18th special council meeting be received and adopted, please. Councillor Elmsley, seconded by Councillor Vale. All in favor? That's passed. We'll move right into deputations. Our first deputation is item 6.1, the use of city-owned property adjacent to Stanley Road, Woodville. Regarding item 8.3.5 on the agenda, Ms. Robin Wagnell. I'll just remind you, ma'am, that you did a deputation at Committee of the Whole, so you're only 2.5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, I'm here today to reiterate my position regarding the issues of parkland and road allowance. Most everything that has been placed on the city property has ruined my view of nature and thus lowered the property value. The view of trees and bush was replaced by vehicles, propane tanks, sheds, etc. on the parkland. Recently, 2 boats have been added on the park. I have sent photos to show the swing set obstructing my view. There are many items on the road allowance, including a shed, a well, no trespassing signs, ownership signs, wood piles, fire pits, etc. I tried to clarify my issues about my view of the water and the problems walking on the road lots last meeting. I became bewildered about a few things. At the meeting, it was stated that 20 properties border and encroach on the road lots. I have only known the road lots to border my 3 lots and 3 others. For over 50 years, it has been understood that the fence spoken of previously in the last meeting signifies the end of the road allowance. The road then no longer follows the shoreline and goes over water. Conversely, real estate agents, family members, and myself have been intimidated when walking in front of my own property. This has resulted in police action towards me. City staff have also suggested I stay off public lands until the meeting, causing further alienation to me. Also, real estate agents tried to see the view of the water from my house. They felt like they were trespassing on personal property, not public land, limiting water access. My agent has declined renewing our contract because of the stress about the access. Most neighbors use their own property to store garbage, put up sheds, and have swing sets. After all, we have large properties. Seriously, all I want is to be able to sit in my yard without feeling isolated. I would like my view not to be impeded by large items. I do not want to trip over bike ramps, shovels, or bikes in front of my house. I feel unsafe due to odd happenings around my home. I cannot walk to the water without the idea that someone will stop me or call the police. I just want to do what I've always done for the past 50 years, to have the freedom of walking to the water and taking out my boat again from my own dock. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just get a motion to receive. We'll see if there's any questions. Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Are there any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, all in favor? That's passed. Thank you for sharing with us today. We appreciate it. Okay, we'll move into our second deputation, which is item 6.2, Mr. John Ireland, which is a proposed heritage designation for 3 St. David Street and 4 Riverview Road in Lindsay. It's regarding item 8.3.14 on the agenda. We have 2 deputations on this item today, and I just want to remind everyone that what the report is on this agenda is regarding the heritage designation for this property. It is not about a future development. It is about whether council deems it on the recommendation of the Heritage Committee as heritage buildings or not. So we are not discussing a future development. We have a planning process, a very public planning process that needs to go through. That's what that's there for, and that's not what's on the table here today. So go ahead, sir, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about the Heritage Conservation Project. My name is John Ireland. My wife and I live in a century home on Mill Street. For those of you who are old-time Lindsay people, it was originally Dr. Gleason's house and then became Judge Woods' house. We, the Irelands, have been there for the last 28 years and raised our kids in this community. We love it. 16 months ago, the request for a heritage designation of the historic Mill District was put before council. As a result of community interest in this initiative, 350 community members have indicated they want these homes preserved. The Lindsay Advocate recently published an article, and it was amazing. I was surprised at the response that they received by people who didn't know that these buildings were planning on being taken down, and that there was so much heritage there, and there was so much part of the community. The interest grows daily. These homes sit on the original Purdy land tract, when the town was actually first called Purdy Mills. Doing some of the research and looking back, this goes back, the establishment of part of the Lindsay thing goes back 29 years before Confederation of Canada. It's hugely historic. 2 of the properties house some of Lindsay's most prominent contributors to development of what we call Lindsay. One of the stories I particularly like is that Sadler ran the steamboat. My dear friend and neighbor, who's not with us anymore, Len Shea, who got me interested in the history of Lindsay, told me about the steamboat that would take the people in the area. I guess they were affluent. They would take them by steamboat up to Sturgeon Point on the lake, where they had their weekend homes. I wonder how fabulous that trip would have been, taking a steamboat up to the point. Needler and Sadler ran the mill. They lived in that particular property. There's another family that was here that very prominent, the Foleys. They were listed in the history books as people who started the first hardware store in Lindsay. They lived on the property as well. The St. David home was also noted as a gathering center in the early 1900s of the who's who in Lindsay. All of the guys that were involved in building the town, I guess they all got together on a Saturday night at that particular home. What we're doing is we're asking council to protect our history and to preserve our identity. I realize now that the issue has raised, this whole scenario has raised other issues, of which I have listed, but I won't address today. I'll address that at the planning part of this. But I do want to let you know that there's a tremendous groundswell happening out there of people who are saying, we want to preserve our history. We want to preserve our heritage. We are not against people having places to live, but we are against it being in that particular spot. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, sir. Let me see if there's any questions for you before you run away. We'll get a motion to receive. Councillor Dunn and Elmsley, are there any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, all in favor? That's passed. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Item 6.3 is another deputation regarding the same heritage designation, 3 St. David and 4 Riverview Road. Mr. Jim Garbett. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, respected Mayor and members of Council. I appreciate this opportunity to address this matter today, the proposed heritage designation for 3 St. David Street and 4 Riverview, Lindsay. I attended, actually, the first thing I'd like to do is I came out of the Committee of the Whole meeting a little confused with some of what I heard at that time, and I was concerned that some of the information being discussed or raised in terms of concerns and statements may not be fully accurate. Okay, and so I thought I might address some of that. There are some misconceptions. I know that your agendas are full. I came away wondering whether you folks had had a chance to read fully Emily Turner, our heritage officers, our heritage planners, excellent report. I agree with you, Councillor Riley, it was excellent. So, and to that regard, I started thinking that, maybe I could give you the Coles Notes version of exactly what your Heritage Committee does, and I'm talking brief. And then maybe I can discuss or talk to some of the points that were made there. First of all, we're a provincially mandated committee. Yeah, you have to have us. So anyway, and we take our responsibilities very seriously. Some of the literature that I have brought along today that I'm going to leave for you. In short, this is off of the Ministry of, or the provincial website that is an introductory guide to identifying, protecting, and promoting heritage in our communities. 3 key points: identify, protect, and promote. Okay, and that's what we do for you. There's another bulletin from the province, and it's called What a Municipal Heritage Committee Does. And the definition of a Municipal Heritage Committee is a Municipal Heritage Committee is an advisory committee. Like every advisory committee, a Municipal Heritage Committee can help a community participate more directly in a municipality's decision-making process by broadening the scope of information that goes into a municipality's decision-making process when it's addressing issues that impact a community. In summary, advise and recommend, provide knowledge and expertise, facilitate the work of an organizing body by ensuring open and honest representation, creating a climate of consensus and maintaining the integrity of the committee, be sensitive to the community which it represents, promote goodwill and trust within the community of interest and community at large, act as liaison between politicians, organizational staff, members of public, and other stakeholders. We also have a mission statement for this city, which reads as, the Kawartha Lakes Municipal Heritage Committee is established to provide advice and recommendations to Council on community heritage matters. In particular, the Municipal Heritage Committee will evaluate and recommend candidate sites of cultural, heritage value, or interest according to the criteria identified in Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, conservation of properties and cultural heritage value or interest. On the identification of potential heritage conservation districts of Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and will recommend sites as properties of potential heritage value or interest. The committee serves the citizens of Kawartha Lakes by helping to ensure that the plans for change and progress are developed in a way that recognizes the historical continuity of their community. That's what we do. And that's what we did. And I think we may have upset a few people with our recommendations to, list properties or even eventually designate. So I'd like to address some of the concerns that were raised. Councillor O'Reilly had expressed some concern about the actual, integrity inside of the building and whatnot. I can honestly say we didn't have a chance to assess that because we weren't granted access to the property or inside. There may very well have been features inside. We can't comment on that because we don't know. We're not psychic. Your comment about 200, 300 other properties, that might be similar. I get it. I didn't know I had these heritage skills. I would have put you to work a lot sooner. That's for sure. So anyway, probably not with this degree of history. I can understand your concern about the building, but Emily Turner, in her excellent report, did not say that they weren't worthy of designation. We only need to meet one criteria out of 9. We more than met 9, okay, but not as much on the interior. And again, we couldn't have access in there. So that's one factor there as well. As far as it being intact as part of a community or even as a structure, there's been modifications. That's true. But we managed to get 2 successful heritage districts established in the city of Kawartha Lakes in record time. The leading consultants said that they've never seen it happen so fast. And I can tell you that the quality of the buildings downtown, if you look at them, very few are intact completely, but we still managed to qualify for not only a designation, but a district designation. So for that, it's important.
I'll just ask you to wrap it up, Mr. Garbett, if you will, please. Your 5 minutes is up.
Okay. I think that there may be options that we need to look at. I want to assure you that we did not act in bad faith in any way, that there's no backdoor processes going on that didn't work. And I'm heartened. I think there's options out there that could be looked at, but I'm fearful for this structure, and we're going to lose 2 of the most important historic buildings by nature of that. The only example I can come up with is the development on the river, in which the Mayor Letham actually opposed it and actually said, once it's gone, it's gone. Same thing here. But you managed to ask city staff to go out and look at options, and they came back in short order with multiple options. People have said to me, can it be a museum if not suitable for housing? Because there's a need for that. We have 2 councillors here that are very dedicated in helping out on the Cultural Center Committee. At a certain
wrap
point
it up,
in time,
Mr. Garbett?
Very good.
Okay.
Anyway, I just hope that we look at options. I'm fearful that we're missing, we're about to lose a lot of this, and I think the momentum's been there. I really hope that we're not making a mistake here if demolition is the issue. I don't understand why there's things being torn down already. I don't understand. We thought in good faith that the developer, we're being told by city staff that we have time. That's why we came forward with these other recommendations.
Okay. Thank you.
Could I?
You got one more sentence.
One more sentence?
Yeah,
Just
you had
one more?
5 minutes, you've taken 10, so.
Okay.
So it's a
Well,
deputation. Do you want to
good.
wrap it up with a sentence?
Yes,
or?
yes, I could. One sentence. Okay. If you have no stomach for designation in this, I hope that you'll revisit the situation and consider at least listing. I do believe these are threatened by what's going on there right now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll get a motion to receive. We'll see if there's any questions for you. Councillor Seymour Fagan and Councillor Ashmore. Any questions for the deputant? Councillor Seymour Fagan, go ahead.
Yes, through you. I lived in a designated area in Minneapolis, and the house was designated. It was up to the homeowner to do the upgrades. The homes that I've seen in that area are quite run down. So I don't know how they would bring it back to historical designation, because if it's going to be designated, then it should be restored back to, and if these are rental homes, they look like they're past their prime at this point. Can you tell me a little bit about?
Well, in all honesty, the district, although Mr. Ireland says that it's been out there for 16 months and he's circulated, I have no explanation as to why this application or Mr. Ireland never made it to our Heritage Committee. He says he was talking to city staff. I don't know, that's not party to me. I wasn't aware of even what was going on with Riverview and St. David until I walked into that May 1st meeting and then got it on the agenda till May 3rd. All this time it's been going on, and I looked from the reports dating back to 2016, but never have city staff ever brought it to our attention, at the Heritage Committee. So I really don't know if that addresses that. Did I answer that?
No.
Oh, sorry. Can you rephrase the question then?
The homes are in very, very rough shape.
Yes.
And to bring them back to, well, from what I've seen from the outside, I don't know what the inside's like, Mr. Ireland. All that I'm saying is to bring them back to where they should be when they're designated, the current owners would have to do that. From what I see, I don't see that the money's there for that. I don't know.
I was told that they were lovingly restored and that they're deteriorated now through rental. I do know that the current owner of the property has ripped out kitchens and flooring and whatnot, but without having access to the interior, I can't say. Neighbors that had befriended the owner, and she was very much a part of the community. They all, in spite of what's going on, they still refer to her as a very nice person. They said that she and her husband lovingly restored both buildings, so I don't know. But anyway, the story, Carl Bray, as one of the leading consultants that came and did our downtown, he had looked at that area and across the river in what they call Pumpkin Hollow or Mill Street at one point, and he considered them equal. And I mentioned this at the planning committee just off the hip. And so he saw, a connection there as part of the original Purdy property. I don't know what, it would be up to a consultant to decide exactly where the boundaries would go. I don't know, would it end at King Street down there? I have seen some pretty rundown heritage districts revitalized through CIP processes and the $1 million makeover, things that our city staff have done an excellent job on working towards. Did I get it that time?
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, we have a motion to receive. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you, Mr. Garbett. That item has been extracted on our consent agenda by Councillor Dunn, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Item 6, right? Yeah, item 6.4 is our next deputation is John Gorel regarding a development charge deferral regarding report item 10.1.11 on our consent agenda. Welcome, Mr. Gorel.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. I appear today just to make a request for a deferral of developmental charges for a 2-year period for all into storage at 74 Colburn Street East. Would allow us to complete the next phase of our expansion without we're staying close to budget. And that's my request for today.
Okay, we'll see if there's any questions for you. We'll get a motion to receive. Councillor O'Reilly? Motion to receive. Councillor O'Reilly and Vale. Questions? Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, we have that report extracted on our agenda, so we'll have a discussion about it later if you're going to stick around. But we have a motion to receive. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Appreciate it. We'll move right into item 7, which is our presentation. I'm pleased to introduce our Integrity Commissioner, Office for the City of Kawartha Lakes, Mr. Charles Harnick from ADR Chambers is here to give us an overview. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. By way of introduction, I'm Charles Harnick, and I'm the Integrity Commissioner for the City of Kawartha Lakes. Just by way of background, I am a lawyer. I've been in practice or practiced for over 40 years. I spent some time in politics, so I understand a little bit about your world. I was just shy of 10 years in the Ontario legislature. I had the honor of serving as the Attorney General for 4 years, as well as the minister then responsible for Native Affairs, as it then was. And of interest during those years, I had the extreme honor of working with the former Chief Justice, late Chief Justice Gregory Evans, and I was on a committee of two other people with the Chief Justice, and we wrote the Members Integrity Act, which was passed in the legislature in 1994 while I was still in the opposition. Just a little bit about ADR Chambers. I do my work as Integrity Commissioner through a company called ADR Chambers, which is a dispute resolution organization that has gotten into the Office of the Integrity Commissioner work and been doing it since 2011. Just one of the important things about ADR Chambers is that we have a team that if I can't do the work or if I'm involved somewhere else, I'm allowed to designate to others. We have a whole team who have nothing but experience in the world of integrity commissioners and investigations and the kind of work that integrity commissioners do. The role of the integrity commissioner was significantly expanded in 2019, in March 2019, with Bill 68, and it caused, I guess, every community, every local council to the need to appoint an integrity commissioner. And just to tell you a little bit about what the responsibilities include, it includes reviewing, investigating and reporting of complaints, particularly as related to the code of conduct which you have, providing advice to council members, providing educational information and educational sessions to council members, preparing annual reports, and inquiring into potential breaches of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. The Integrity Commissioner has latitude and flexibility if indeed they receive a complaint. One of the things that I look to do is to attempt to settle complaints at any point during the investigation if it's appropriate. Trying to settle and resolve issues is often better than getting to the end of the process and having winners and losers. The Integrity Commissioner can close a file where a complaint appears to be frivolous, abusive, vexatious, and I know in the political world, political scores are settled here and there, and one has to, I believe, understand a little bit about the world that you live in, and that's certainly something I look at. The Integrity Commissioner, where the Integrity Commissioner determines an investigation is necessary, the Integrity Commissioner will endeavor to complete that process within 90 days of receiving the complaint. Members of council as a whole may contact the Integrity Commissioner in writing to ask questions and obtain advice from the Integrity Commissioner in writing. That's what the statute now requires. So anybody has a question, you may feel free to contact me through ADR Chambers. It has to be in writing. I will provide the advice in writing. If there are issues that need clarification, we may speak, but the process begins and ends in writing. I will endeavor, of course, to try and get something to you within 10 days. Sometimes I've had situations where council is meeting and you need the information within the hour, and we've been able to do that as well. One of the really important things that that we do, and that I think is something you may wish to consider, is we conduct educational sessions for council members. We go through the code of conduct and the highlights of it, where the issues are likely to arise, where are the sensitive points, what are the most important areas that you really should understand as you make decisions day to day, and how do you avoid getting into trouble. That's something that I think is important. And with respect, I think people should consider whether you want me to spend a session doing that. I'd do it at an open session so that the public could participate, because it's important for them to understand that you have a code of conduct and what it means. Annually, we would also provide an annual report regarding the cases that we dealt with. It would be provided through the clerk, and that would be something that was done annually. And it may include some recommendations regarding amendments to the code or the complaint process as we go forward. And you learn things as you go, and you may want to make changes periodically. It's a living document, and things change. You may want the code to change. Just very briefly, I draw your attention to the new provisions in the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, which are rigid, particularly the Section 5 issues that are important. And I would certainly recommend that as part of an education process that we spend a bit of time looking at the conflict of interest, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. That really is the extent of what I wanted to say. You've got a lengthy agenda, and you certainly don't need me here wasting a lot of your time if you're going to plow through that agenda in the day that you have ahead of you. We don't do that. We didn't do that much in the Ontario legislature for almost a whole sitting. So I look at that agenda, and it's pretty massive. One thing that, by way of recommendation, your code, I've looked at your code of conduct. It's very good. It's very comprehensive. I've been asked to take a look at it and make some recommendations. We will do that by the end of the year. The other thing that I would recommend is, and we will append to our recommendations an appendix that lays out a process so that you understand how we do the investigation and how we allocate our time to ensure that we do it over a 90-day period, and everybody gets a chance to respond if they're the subject of the complaint. They get to respond appropriately with adequate time, and that you would have a much better understanding of the stages that we would go through and how we would, in fact, carry out an investigation. And my recommendation would be that that should be an appendix to your code of conduct. So that being said, I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to introduce myself. And as I say, we are available for advice and whatever else you may want to talk about. And if there are any questions, I'd be delighted.
Thank you, and we appreciate you coming and sharing that with us. I'll get a motion to receive. We'll see if there's any questions. Councillor Vale and Richardson. Councillor Helmsley, you had a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you very much for coming. Do I have to put my question in writing right now, or?
As long as it's general, not specific to any case that may
Just say
arise.
yes. Just say yes.
I have to lay out the ground rules.
Okay. I assume that probably one of the most contentious issues that comes up is items discussed in closed session. Would it be fair to say that that would be the majority of complaints or things that would come forward?
Remarkably not, because closed sessions now are prescribed in certain circumstances, and there have been very little by way of the things that I've seen, if anything, that's involved closed sessions. The areas that I take a look at frequently are areas around gifts, things of that nature, conduct at meetings, the way someone speaks to someone else. Those are more of the flashpoint issues that you'd look at. But closed sessions now I think people are pretty much used to the restrictions that exist and don't really seem to be a significant problem.
Terrific, thanks. And through you again, Mr. Mayor, you would respond to complaints from the public about council, or now would it include staff, or does that, does the city hierarchy look after those kinds of things?
There are other processes that deal with staff. So that would not be something that I would deal with. I would deal with a complaint where there's been an alleged breach of the code that the public may bring. I would deal with a complaint about from one councillor complaining about another councillor. I would deal with something that happened at boards that are boards of the city-appointed boards, and someone would maybe have a complaint about a member of the board. That would come to me. But that would be the scope of where I would be involved.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Harnick? Seeing none, we have a motion to receive. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you very much for coming, and we'll certainly going to have a discussion about setting up a session, I think, in the new year, and see if we can have a good discussion at that time. So thank you for sharing with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll move into item 8, which is Committee of the Whole. Correspondence regarding Committee of the Whole, we have none. Committee of the Whole minutes, September 10th, 2019. So I need a motion that the minutes of the September 10th, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting be received, and the recommendations included in section 8.3 of the agenda, save and accept extractions of 832, the request to purchase land adjacent to 1474 Fleetwood Road, 8310, the Affordable Housing Targets Report, 8314, proposed designation of 3 St. David Street and 4 Riverview Road, 8317, a downtown reconstruction update, 8319, winter maintenance fee for service review, and 8320, the requirement to connect to municipal services review. Are there any other extractions from Committee of the Whole?
836, I don't know if extract it or just make a comment on it.
You can. Do you have a question? Is that what you're looking?
Question as much as a comment.
Okay, well, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. We can do that now. Yeah, if you don't need to extract it.
Without extracting it, just the deputy was here today and provided some literature. And I just wanted to be clear that what we're passing is the right for the person to reach an agreement with the city on the use of the property adjacent to 129 only. And that does not include the dock, which is part of Trent Severn Waterway. That is a separate issue unrelated to the city, and it does not include anything to do with the parkland that is adjacent to that with the pictures of the trailers. That, again, is a totally different matter. And we have asked them to move the shed, and quite happy with the compromise that was found there. So I just wanted to make that comment that it's one piece of property, not all of the properties as the literature shows. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Your motion specified that the shed not be included in the encroachment agreement. So we haven't asked them to remove it, but obviously they would if it's not part of the agreement, if it comes forward. So, agree? Okay. So we're good? So we don't need to extract that one? Okay. So is that good for extractions for rest? Okay, so that save and accept those be adopted. So I need that motion. Councillor Seymour Fagan, Councillor Richardson, all in favor? That's passed. So the first extraction is 832, request to purchase land adjacent to 1474 Fleetwood Road. Councillor Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a motion for you that the report, I guess it'd be the delegation, or the delegation be received as opposed to the report, that the parcel of land requested in the delegation, the actual deputation, that's the word I was searching for.
The deputation was done as 831 as a separate, that's already passed. So we've received the deputation
Okay,
from
all
the
right.
last meeting. This is just dealing with the follow-up motion, which was directing staff to do that direct sale to the resident
okay.
after the deputation. So they were separated.
So my motion would be that the parcel of land requested during the deputation be conveyed to Mrs. Jones? Darla Jones? I'm sorry, I've lost the name now. Yes, that the remaining parcel of land be referred to the Land Management Committee for disposal in the normal manner. And if I get a seconder, I'll explain my motion.
So just for clarification, you're looking at offering her the
1.4 meters that was asked for in the deputation.
Right.
I have absolutely no issue with that whatsoever. I think that should be conveyed to Mrs. Jones by whatever means is required
So
by the
offer
city.
the 1.4 meters
Yep.
and then put the rest of the parcel,
Then-
land management,
Well, then referred,
for a recommendation back.
This, it actually be part of the argument, but this property hasn't been declared surplus yet, and yet we're making it a direct sale. So I think it should go through the normal process, being considered by the Land Management Committee for declaration that it's going to be surplus. Because right
Okay.
now, we're just saying, although we're not going to declare
Let me
it
get you
surplus.
let me get you a seconder and you
All
can
right,
finish your
sure.
conversation.
All right.
Councillor Yeo will second that. Go
All right.
ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I understand the deputation. It was a well-presented deputation. The lady came forward. She's looking because of problems with surveys and so on and so forth. She came forward and she asked for the 1.4 meters so that she was in compliance. She was no longer encroaching on city property. Great presentation. I absolutely agree with it, and I think that piece of property, that 1.4 meters, should be conveyed to Mrs. Jones. That's where I stop, because the remainder of the property, number one, hasn't gone through our Land Management Committee to even be declared surplus yet. The other portion is that oftentimes, now if we look at our regulations, we can't sell a piece of property unless we sell it at market value. That's already required. So the fact that somebody's prepared to pay market value, that's nice, but we can't sell it if they don't. And there's already regulations in place for the conveyance of costs to do that. We have our own rules, and those are part of the rules. So to say I'll do that, basically they're saying I'll follow your rules if you sell it to me. Now, what we have experienced over the years is we've placed property up for sale, and in fact, although it's at market value, we've had offers for greater than market value. And my second argument would be if somebody actually came in and bought that, they might develop the property, which would turn around and result in increased investment in our city rather than just becoming a vacant lot beside another piece of property. So I think we should have the discussion. I think we should go through the process. But in the meantime, take the pressure off Ms. Jones as far as her 1.4 meter encroachment. And I hope that you support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo, do you wish to speak to it?
No.
Okay. City Solicitor, you had a comment? Go ahead, please.
Just for the information of council, I just wanted to let everybody know that the matter had actually come to land management, and we discussed the fact that the entire parcel itself could be declared surplus, so it just hasn't made its way to council. If the council decided to proceed with a direct sale, we would still run it through the process. We would still advertise and bring it forward for a declaration of surplus to make sure that the provisions of our bylaw were upheld.
Any further questions regarding the recommendation? Do you want a question? Yeah?
Okay, so you've run it through the process, and I'm going to make numbers up. The value of the property is $20,000. And I say, well, I'll give you 30 for it. What happens now? Because we've just made a declaration that it be sold to the adjoining owner at market value.
Yes, through the mayor. The recommendation of the Land Management Committee was actually to sell the entire parcel on the open market so that we get the highest value.
That was the
Okay.
original motion that came to committee of the whole. we changed it there to give it a direct sale for the whole parcel to the resident. So now you've changed it again.
All right, yeah, because where I have my issue is if in fact, according to the report that's going to be coming to us, if in fact we sell it to somebody else beside Ms. Jones for market value, then the issue of the encroachment still exists. I would like that we deal with the issue of encroachment so that that's dealt with. So it'll be a little bit smaller. It'll be 1.4 meters smaller, but that piece of property go through the process that you've just described. That's all I'm saying.
And that makes sense. I mean, we can do the encroachment on the 1.4 meters if council chooses to, and then the rest of the property could be declared surplus on the open market. I think that's the direction the councilor's looking for. Is there any issues with that?
No, there's not. We confirmed with planning that the balance of the property is developable.
Okay, thank you. Are there any, Councillor Richardson, go ahead. You had a question, sorry.
I think now I'm really confused. So I just want clarification. So we're going to do the 1.4, so we have the minor variance encroachments, and then it's going to go to land open? Because I know my residents willing to, pay their market value plus all the fees, which I think is beneficial at this time, because we're still putting into a two-step process where we could be completely done, because she's willing to purchase that lot now. And it's it's a road, a thicket, and then her house, and it's an unassumed road. So, I think right now, if we can move forward, I'm asking for council support right now to move it so the resident can purchase it.
The entire property. So
The
you're
entire
speaking
property.
against the motion
I am.
that the councilor's putting forward. I think what he's suggesting is that we sever off the 1.4 meters, sell it to the resident, and then put the rest of the property out on the open market. So that was one of the options, I know, when the report came forward. So council didn't choose that at the time, but that's what the councilor's proposing now. So any further questions? Councillor Elmsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To somebody, would it be appropriate to defer any resolution on the 1.4 meters or on the sale of the property until the report come to council on declaring it surplus? Because who knows? What if it comes to council and it's decided it's not surplus?
You want to address that process? I'm not sure I understand the question, but is there a process there that we can follow?
Yes, and I believe that the councillor is concerned perhaps that there could be a public interest in the 1.4 meters or the entire parcel. If either way, however council decides to go today, if they decide to sell the 1.4 meters, they decide to sell the entire parcel, we will make sure that it runs through the process. So it goes through 3 weeks of newspaper posting and on-site posting if we're considering the entire parcel, and that we bring the matter back for a declaration of surplus so that is so any concern from the public is captured before we make a final decision.
And that was part of the original motion, was that staff be directed to prepare a report for consideration by council to declare the city-owned property adjacent to blah, blah, surplus to municipal needs. So that can come back to council no matter what the recommendation is, and council can decide at that time not to declare it surplus, correct? So that's part of that process moving forward.
That's correct.
If that happens, what happens to the 1.4 meters? Because it's part and parcel of that piece of land.
Well, the resident would still have to deal with the 1.4 meters.
But it wouldn't have been declared surplus by council. If it's not declared surplus by council, all I'm saying is I'm worried we're putting the cart before the horse in the sense that we don't want any more confusion from the resident, by the resident, in terms of where property ends and starts. And if we, I'm quite confident it's going to be declared surplus, but, you know, things have happened before. And I'm just, if it's going to be with us within the next month, then all I'm saying is, let's declare it surplus, and then let's decide whether we want to sell it to her for market value, the whole piece of property, or whether we want to do the 1.4 meters and deal with the rest of the property separately. So
Yeah.
I guess the question is,
I think that's what we're
when
doing,
might
though.
it-
I think that's what we're doing. If this comes back, and even with the direction after it, if council doesn't declare it surplus, then the follow-up action is invalid because it's not been declared surplus in the first place. So we can't sell it to somebody if council doesn't declare it surplus. We're just trying to get all the ducks in a row. The residents anxious to close off this outstanding building permit without being held up any longer. So it's either sever off a piece and declare the rest surplus as the councillor's suggesting, or the original motion was to just declare it surplus and do a direct sale to the resident, and they're going to pay all the costs and we're done with it. This is motion on the floor. Any other questions? Everybody clear? Do you want to follow up or sum up? Yeah.
Yeah, all I'm trying to do is guarantee, Ms. Jones? Ms. Jones, okay, that she gets her 1.4. Then if the property's severed off and they want to buy it, fine, they can do it on the open market. It's a completely developable piece of property. What's left after the 1.4? What I am concerned about is if we don't sever it off and give her the 1.4, and somebody buys the whole property, then there's an encroachment. So sever the 1.4 off, deal with that, deal with the issue, and then we can deal with the sale of the property, the remaining property in a normal fashion, just like we would do every other time. That's what I'm trying to. That's where I'm trying to end up.
So just for clarification, we're not going to, solicitor, Robin, we're not going to give her the 1.4 meters. We're going to sell her with the 1.4 meters with all the costs. You said give, and I know you're meaning sell, but I want that for clarification.
That is my understanding, that it would be a sale at fair market value plus all costs.
And all the costs of severing it off, the resident would pay as well.
That's correct.
Thank you. That was a sum up. Do you have a question for clarification? Yeah, go ahead.
It could swing my vote either way. So we're now conveying the land with all costs, the 1.4 meters. Now, is this something that has to go through the full planning aspect, or is something the director can sign off on because it's a direction from council?
The prohibition against severing in the Planning Act, there's an exemption for municipalities, so it does not have to go through planning.
Clarification?
Yeah. So she's going to pay all the costs for the severance and the 1.4 plus all of the associated costs. Then if she buys the rest of the property, she's got to pay all those legal costs and everything over again?
My understanding is whoever purchases the property on the open market pays all the costs of processing that property, correct?
What we do with the costs are, if it's one parcel and there's a certain amount of costs and it's being split into two parcels, we'll do, if this is, say, 10%, we'd take 10% of the cost and put it to this sale, and the 90% to this sale. If she was buying all, she'd pay the 100%, but we wouldn't double charge her for the same costs.
Okay, everybody clear? Call the question, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, motion fails. Do you wish to do a follow-up, Councillor Richardson?
I don't know if I'm hog-tying myself here. Yeah, I'm firm, and when I'm reading the subject property be offered for direct sale to the owner of 1474 Fleetwood Road and sold for no less than the appraised value plus any of all costs associated with the transaction, that's what I'm reading it, and that's what I'm supporting.
So the original recommendation
Yes.
that came from the committee, prepare the report for surplus, and that the property be offered for direct sale to the owner with
Yes.
all the costs. Okay, get a seconder? Councillor O'Reilly, do you want to speak to it? No? Councillor O'Reilly?
Just briefly, even though the other one is a very good option, I think finding this is over, we can do it neat and tidy and clean, and there's only, we're not splitting the property, there's just one sale and whatever, and we go from there.
Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Passes. Thank you. The next extraction is 8310, which is the Affordable Housing Targets Report. Councillor Dunn, your extraction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move the first portion, the affordable housing target rentals and process to encourage them outlined in report HH 2019-008 be received, and that it be referred to finance for a full costing. And if I get a seconder, I will explain it and what I'm looking for.
You'll second that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're entering into probably a multi-million-dollar process, and the reason why I use probably is we don't have a clue what it's going to cost us. We do know there's 850 houses that they want to add subsidies for at $500 a house per month. So 500 times 850 times infinity is a fairly decent number. Plus, we're going to waive development charges, and now we waive development charges. That in itself is a taxpayer because we don't waive the development and then just put them onto a different developer. We pay the development charges. So there's all those charges that are recommended. I think they're all great, but we should at least be able to say and be able to defend the fact that we're spending millions of dollars and actually say this is what we plan on spending. So to walk into it blindly, I just don't think is good business.
Councillor Yeo, you seconded it. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, a little more information, never hurt anybody, and I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Riley?
Just get the director to speak to the comments that we've heard so far, if you would, or whoever, either Hope or to Rod.
Refer to
Just for
You're
clarification.
going to refer to Hope? Hope, do you want to come up the podium and we'll beat you up again? You got broad shoulders.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the council, like the report mentions, it's really too complex to be able to take it back to finance and have them totally costed out. They're targets, they're a goal, and then we're going to ask for expressions of interest of how different partners are going to assist us to do that. Until we really know how they're going to assist us and who's going to come to the table, there's no way to really cost that out accurately. The subsidies, all the subsidies won't be on the municipal tax base. One positive thing of the National Housing Strategy is there is going to be a housing benefit that's hopefully going to be available shortly. So that will help to provide some of those subsidies as well. So that I'm not sure how you cost it out.
So there. Go ahead.
That was my concern, because you expressed that the last time you were here, so and there was so many variables that I know that it's not great going into something without knowing the cost, but it's really hard to nail down the cost. So how can you really accurately knowing even who all the partners are even yet?
Councillor Helmsley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll speak against the motion, and for the reasons that were articulated by the manager of housing. Also, I think what we're looking at here are targets. Anything we do along these lines is obviously going to have to come back to council. It's all going to be debated at that point as to whether we go ahead. I think trying to parse what may happen in terms of the private sector, what the impact of secondary suites, what our partners in Halliburton may do, all of these things play into it. And what we have is a template to go forward, but it's not a decision that we must. It is, this is where we'd like to be in 10 years. all things being equal, let's try to get there. So for those reasons, I think we should go with the motion as it was presented to us originally. And so I don't believe that there is any value in trying to burden our finance people with trying to maybe put a camel through the head of a needle or something. And I just think it's an exercise in futility. So I won't be supporting it.
Any other questions? I think, the issue that, I'm not going to beat it to death, but the issue that comes up is we're setting aggressive targets without knowing the costs. Why are we setting such aggressive targets if we don't know what the costs are? But I know it's more complex than that, and I get it. Councillor Dunn, you want to sum up?
I think we better find a way to figure at least some of it out. The last time we did this, we built a place down on Lindsay Street. And after we were into it for, $8 million, we had an oopsie and we need another 4. I think that's pretty close to the numbers. This is a reading in comparison. And we got criticized for it, and so we should have been, because our budget was way, way off. And yet we're jumping into this with both feet and saying, well, we'll figure it out as we go. And for me, that's just it's not good business. Figure it out, put it on the table and figure it out. But don't just jump in and say, well, it's a nice thing to, I'm a housing guy, I like housing, but to jump into it and say with both feet and say, oh, the heck with it, we're going to do it anyway, and they're targets. We may succeed, we may not. It's just simply not good business.
If I can just ask you, if a recorded vote, sure, but if I can just ask you, how do you, the manager is telling us that we can't accurately cost it moving forward, so how do you propose, what is it you're actually looking for when you're saying there's too many variables to be able to cost it out?
You go on the best case, worst case scenario, as in, okay, so it's going to be 850, 850 times 500, and I'm just going to deal with the subsidies, and we expect maybe something is coming down the pipe that may relieve it by $250 a month. Somebody may, so you can say best case scenario, the subsidies are going to cost this, worst case scenario, or they're going to cost this.
So a range, some kind of a range.
Everything, you can get a ball house figure on things without, we missed by $4 million the last time, but at least we should try.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think it's just, sorry? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. So for clarity, I guess just one. So we can do some comparative projects too. The 68 Lindsay is a tough one to compare because it's not all housing. It's also an administrative building, and a lot of the costs were associated with that. I think the other major piece, though, is there's a number of levers, as you know, that council can turn on and off depending. And I think that's, if you were to apply the whole suite of them, then you're going to have exorbitant costs potentially. So it's just really providing that strong caution that it really is up to you sort of working through that process to determine sort of the level of affordability, if you will, and those levers for the different types of housing. The other major piece that I think is also really important is the community housing component of those units. They have a revenue source back. Rents are paid. So if we're doing an expense sort of model, we have to account for the revenues through rent that occurs sort of over the time period. And so I just think it's an important one because we're focusing solely on the expenditure side of the ledger, if you will. And I think that tells a much different story in terms of the long run in those units.
Thank you. You want to respond? Yep.
I fully understand that, but that's why I'm asking for a costing. This is our anticipated expense. This is our anticipated revenue. This is where we're going to end up. I understand that they're going to be revenue generating, but right now to approve this, quite frankly, I believe that if money wasn't a problem and land wasn't a problem, I honestly don't think we could meet these targets in 10 years. I could be wrong, but if all the stars aligned, I think the targets are still more ambitious than what we're capable of doing. But that's another story. But I would like to at least say, well, this was the best information we had at the time when we made the decision. And based on the best information we had, we made our best decision. But right now, I'm going to walk into this and I'm going to say, well, we didn't know, so we just kind of guessed, and it seemed like a nice thing to do, and that's where I have a hard time.
Thank you. A recorded vote requested by Councillor Dunn. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Dunn? Councillor O'Reilly? Councillor Seymour Fagan?
In favor.
Councillor Yeo?
In favor.
Councillor Richardson? Councillor Ashmore?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Elmsley?
Opposed.
Councillor Vale?
In favor.
Mayor Letham?
In favor. 7 in favor, 2 opposed. Motion passes. Okay, sorry. Next extraction is 8314, the proposed designation of 3 St. David Street and 4 Riverview Road. Councillor Dunn, your extraction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the first portion of that motion, that the Committee of the Whole not endorse the Municipal Heritage Committee's recommendation to designate 3 St. David and 4 Riverview Road under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act as being a cultural and heritage value, and that it be referred to the planning process for consideration during their deliberations. And if I get a seconder, once again, I'll explain my position.
I just think we're, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're crossing 2
Oxymoron?
different motions there.
Sure, okay.
You're designating it not heritage and then referring it to planning.
All right, then, so let's just, that the report be received and referred to planning for consideration. Works the same way. It'll still get us there.
So you're asking the planning process or the planning committee to make a decision on the heritage designation?
Okay, once again, I'm going to get involved in the discussion before and that's fine. I'll explain where I'm coming from.
Well, let's get your motion first, because
Yeah.
I think you can do that. So motion to receive and
refer to
refer
planning, yep.
the report
Yep.
to the planning process?
Sure.
Okay, second by Councillor Seymour Fagan. Go ahead.
Okay, when we started this off, and I'm going to go down to the Grand. When we went through the planning process at the Grand, the original consideration of the Heritage Committee was the facade at the Grand Hotel, before that known as the Market Hotel, I think it was. And it was beyond redemption. It was just simply not redeemable. But the people from the Historical Society and the developers at the time, they got together, and during the development, they're going to have consideration for that. There's going to be pictures and so on and so forth. There's going to be plaques on the wall saying this is what was here, So that type of process recognizes the history of that particular site. It doesn't interfere with the developer's ability to develop. Maybe a plaque out. This was the site of the original. Something along that lines, way beyond me. But I think if the Heritage Committee and the builder and the planning department got together, that they could come up with something that doesn't interrupt the development of the property, but at the same time recognizes the history of that particular piece of property. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Seymour Fagan, do you want to speak to it? You sure? You don't sound very sure yourself. No?
For Councillor Dunn. So how are we going to ensure that the Planning Committee and the Heritage Committee and the builder work together on it? I think that's...
That's probably the easiest part, because I know when we went through the redevelopment of the Grand, it was a very cordial. We sat down and we pounded it out in about an hour and a half. This is what we want. No, we don't want to do that. This is what we, what about this? And we went back and forth, and we came up with something. I can't imagine, with the quality of people that we have on this Historical Society and the willingness of the developer to try and make this work and keep everybody happy. I just can't imagine them not coming together with something. And then ultimately, if they don't, it goes to planning, and planning approves it and it goes through. But at least they have the I just want them to talk about it and see if they can't come up with something.
Yeah, and I'm going to speak against your motion, and I'm just going to, real quick explanation why. I think, I like the direction you're heading, but I think, this council, the Heritage Committee's made a recommendation to this council. This council has to decide, are we designating this heritage or aren't we? I think where we should go with this is we should not designate it a heritage building, but as a follow-up or an addition to it is also ask the planning and the Heritage Committee to to work with the developer to try to preserve some of that heritage characteristics, but still not by declaring them heritage buildings.
That's exactly what I said when I said that it not be designated a heritage site, but that planning consider it during their deliberations. That's why I was trying to,
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I was coming from when I.
That's not the way I heard it the first time.
Yeah.
So through you, so I think for clarification, I think I understand what's trying to be accomplished. The problem is you can't refer that issue for consideration of the planning merits. I appreciate what you're trying to do. In my opinion, if I'm following the logic, you have to decide whether it should be declared heritage or not today. That's council's decision. If anything, you probably should request your Heritage Committee to provide you with some recommendations for celebrating the history or heritage on that property moving forward. And then it really, because there's no jurisdiction through the planning process for our staff to ask a developer to do A or B. But I think if you have the Heritage Committee, which is your appointed committee, sort of working with them, and obviously staff would support that, you just can't refer it to the planning process for part of the considerations of planning.
Okay, then right now there is no motion on the floor. The developer is here, he's listening. I think that's probably enough information, and that it'll probably, there's a good chance it'll move on from there because the developer is in the room. And I'll just give you a no motion and let somebody else make the motion as written.
Withdrawing the motion that you had originally on the floor? Yeah, we did. Councillor Seymour Fagan seconded it. Okay. So somebody else want to take Councillor Ashmore, do you want to take a crack at something?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Mayor, just thought I'd chirp in a bit here because I'm on this committee. I'm just wondering if there's, through you to CIO, if there's any options, like the evidence there seems to show that there is an historical aspect to these two buildings. Before a demolition permit is issued, like, is there any possibility of moving these two structures? I'll just give you an example, and it's gone now, which is a shame, but Cullen Gardens in Whitby, they had a whole 2 or 3 streets of historical buildings that were moved there because different towns in Durham region didn't want to have them demolished. So Cullen Gardens made a certain area where everything was put, which was a beautiful place, but unfortunately it's gone now. But is there any way that these buildings could be moved, or to have some sort of an agreement that everybody's happy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I honestly am not familiar with the 2 individual buildings specific, so I don't know the capacity to be able to move it or not move it, to be quite honest. What you're describing, though, are typical, or there's other municipalities similar that do those types of initiatives for buildings that are designated heritage already in their community, and they just don't fit, I'll say for argument's sake, in that current sort of area or environment. So some developers have taken on developing subdivisions where they will move these facilities. I wouldn't suggest that that is applicable in this particular case for a couple of reasons. Number one, because it's not designated heritage to date, as I understand. And number two, I'm not sure, really it's at the owner's sort of discretion and sort of what is the integrity of the buildings. I think what I'm hearing is it's not so much the maintaining those buildings in their current environment, but it's to celebrate the history that's attached to those properties. And I think if that's something that can be accomplished through staff and the Heritage Committee, to me, that's probably the best option here in this case.
So how about this? How about we do a motion, well, what I would suggest is a motion as printed, which is not to designate them heritage, and then that the Heritage Committee work with staff to come forward with some recommendations on how they can, what was your word? To celebrate the...
To
recognize some of the characteristics of these two buildings, but not doing it by declaring them heritage. Are you okay with that, Councillor Riley? You'll move that?
Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, I think we're all talking around the same, round and round the same thing. So you'll move that, second by Councillor Dunn, you'll second that. Do you want to speak to it?
No, I think Ron has said, just so they work with the Heritage Committee, work with the applicant to make sure the heritage is maintained in some sort of a fashion, whichever they could agree upon anyways. But I think that captures what I think we're trying to do.
Okay, you're good. Anybody else? Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. 8317 is the downtown reconstruction update. Councillor Ashmore, your extraction?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a question, and I apologize I didn't ask it the last time, but through you to, I guess, our engineering staff. The question is the Wellington Street Bridge, and I've seen this project going on for about 3 months now, and it kind of looks like it's going to be going on for quite a few more months. This is a really critical artery bridge, a connecting link to the other side of Lindsay. And I'm just wondering how long this will be going on. Like, is it going to be going on all throughout winter, or is it going to be completed, say, by the end of November? Because it just seems to be moving along kind of slow, in my opinion. But maybe it has a time frame to be finished. But through you to Director, do you know when this will be completed?
Thank you, through your mayor. Just for clarification, the Wellington Street Bridge is not part of the downtown reconstruction. Nevertheless, it's scheduled to be paved early November of this year.
It made all our day. Okay, so I still need a motion for that, the report, the downtown reconstruction update be received. You'll move that. Thank you. Second by Councillor Richardson. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. The next one is the winter maintenance fee for service review, 8319. Councillor Richardson, your extraction.
Thank you, and through you, if I have a motion to receive, and if I have a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Motion to receive, second by Councillor Seymour Fagan. Go ahead.
Okay, so when this came up at Committee of the Whole a couple of weeks ago, I felt like I didn't have I wasn't sure what the decision I did make at that time. And when I read that we're offering McGuire Beach Road Association market rate, why can't we just put that out to a contractor? Because contractors need that type of work. And I'm worried about the pressure that's going to put on our own winter maintenance, because I think we're opening up Pandora's box. And if I can ask Director of Public Works what his thoughts are on that comment.
I think I could answer for the Director of Public Works and tell you he's very much in favor of that motion, but I'll let him speak for himself.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Agreed. If councillor is aware, the report is recommending that we don't do fee-for-service. We've systematically phased out that aspect in order to focus on our mandated obligations under the Municipal Act for maintenance of our roads. So we agree that fee-for-service should not be offered by the municipality for this type of work. Agreed as well that if the decision is of council to apply that work and charge that work out at market rates, it's actually more efficient for the associations to work directly with the private contractor to perform those works.
Thank you. So the motion to receive is to go no further with the agreement. And you second, do you want to speak to it? No. Any other comments, questions? It is just a motion to receive, so Councillor Yeo? Just a motion to receive, so we'll call the question. All in favor? That's passed. Councillor Yeo?
I'll move the rest of the recommendation.
The balance of the recommendation that the fee-for-service winter maintenance activities be offered to the McGuire Beach Road Association at market rate. Seconder by Councillor Dunn. Do you want to speak to it?
Please. I thank you for moving the receive and giving me the privilege to move the rest of it. It's wonderful. So I'm proposing that we do this one road because we're not going, it's not like we're going out of our way, we're going down here and there to get to this road. Our plow goes to this road and does a turn in the middle of a T intersection to turn around and drive back out. When the last kilometer of this road, they could go down and use the wonderful turnaround this road has and right back out again. It's not out of the way. It's been done in the past. They had trouble paying one year and left a bad taste in some people's mouth, and it is just a continuation of service that the city will happen to get paid for. It's one of those natural routes that could just happen. So I hope you'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn, you seconded it. You're okay? Any other questions, comments? Councillor Seymour Fagan, go
I
ahead.
have a question. Is this the only road, through you, the only road that is fee-for-service in the entire municipality?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was other roads that were performing fee-for-service. A few of them have withdrawn and no longer receiving that service. To my knowledge, this is the last of the roads that is recommended by council and is receiving fee-for-service by the municipality. Again, we've worked with this road association on the process to have the road assumed. They're very close. That would be our preference, is for them to follow through with that road assumption policy and have the road assumed for full municipal maintenance, and there would be no cost. But that is, again, up to the association to follow through on.
Okay, thank you. So that might be a catalyst for them to follow up on getting their roads into the order that they need to, so we can assume them.
And they have, I can vouch that they've supplied that, we've supplied that information to them many, many times, and they haven't taken it any further. So, Councillor O'Reilly, you had a comment?
Yeah, through to Councillor Yeo, what do you think the chances of them of getting the money out of the people to bring the road up to a standard? Or what is the reason they won't do it?
I don't know if that's a fair question for the councillor.
No, if he
He
wishes to comment on it. He doesn't have to if he doesn't want to.
Oh, I'll comment on it. The mayor's right, they have been provided the information. Now, some of the information that they have relayed back to me, I think they misunderstood the percentages and stuff required. They were talking 100%, but it's not, it's an unassumed road, so that's 66%. So they have to understand their information a little better, might make their decision a little better. But it's got a bit of a fractional neighborhood and stuff, so there's a lot of seasonal residents, full-time residents, so that's, and by fractured, that's what I mean. I don't mean they fight with each other, but it's just the ownership and stuff, so. Some people are only there 4 or 5 months a year, other ones live there year-round, so it's hard for all of them to agree.
No, just to follow up, because I got 2 or 3 in my area as well, and with bringing up the road to a standard, and half the will and the other half won't pay. And but I don't know that it's a, yeah, I haven't figured out where I'm going to go with this, just because I think that if we do it for them, other people are going to keep coming forward and saying, well, how come you did that and haven't done it for other places? That doesn't, we're dealing with an individual road, I realize that. But.
Councillor Yeo, you follow up? You'll sum up? Okay, Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
I'm going to speak very briefly in favor of this. So many of these communities, and I've been a constant supporter of maintaining cottage roads. I don't know why, because I'm in Ward 5, but I have been, because in a lot of cases, that's the only service that they call on us for. I recognize they receive garbage and police protection and fire protection, but what I'm saying is the only time they ever knock on our door is quite often is to get a little bit of maintenance on the road. So this is a one-year thing. I think we send the word out loud and clear that that maybe we're not going to do this forever, but there are people that live down at the bottom of that road, and I'd hate like hang to see an ambulance or a fire truck not be able to make it because we're not maintaining the road. So I am going to support this motion.
Just for clarification, I don't think it's a 1 year. It's just open-ended. We're just offering them fee-for-service. That can be withdrawn at any time,
Well, that's
obviously,
right.
if
So
they
that,
don't pay. But
so that can, that can be, what I'm saying is, we're doing it this year, and then convey a message loud and clear that this is not going to be ad nauseum. It's, but this year we'll do it, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens next year.
okay, Public Works, you want to comment?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to follow up on and Councillor Dunn's comments. Staff have been working with this association for about 5 years now. That message that you've relayed, that this is a one-time deal and may not happen in future, has been every year for the past 4 years. I would love for the association to get together, improve that road, follow through with the assumption process, and then we can be done with this altogether because it will be an assumed road. We have reservations of providing that fee-for-service for a number of reasons, but primarily because of that, what about my road, what about my road, why don't I get the service? And that has already started. It was a few articles in the paper, calls coming in. I'd rather, as Councillor Richardson mentioned, not open that Pandora's box of why don't I get my fee-for-service? And why am I not eligible for it? So that's our preference, again, is to focus on the roads that we're obligated under the Municipal Act to maintain and provide that service.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore, question?
Just a question for you too, Director. And maybe to everybody or who could answer it. When we're passing this motion, are we saying that there's never going to be another road that's going to be allowed that's to be fee for service? Like I gave a few examples, Cobble Lane and forget the other one, Elder Street. But does this mean today that this is it? This is the last road that we can make a fee for service?
This motion is strictly about McGuire's Beach
Just
Road.
for
It's
this
just
one.
the motion on the table is
Okay.
to offer a
So-
fee for service for McGuire Beach Road.
So my question is, in the future, and in the near future, could I, or any other councillor here, or mayor, ask for another road to be in the fee-for-service
Absolutely.
category?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you're not shutting it?
No.
Okay.
This is just a one road, one motion
That's good.
regarding McGuire Beach Road only. Any other questions? Councillor Yeo, you want to sum up?
Yeah, thank you. Briefly. The motion is very specific to market value, or what the market is valued at right now. It's not saying we're going to do it on the cost recovery basis, which has happened in the past, where in fact, at that time, they were actually getting it done cheap, or on the cheap. Like, we were a little more than half what a contractor would charge them. This motion clearly states that it would be at market value, so they might just find the city's too expensive. That's the reason a couple of roads actually that were fee-for-service have declined it now, because we started charging more. So this just gives them the option, she's been here and spoke about umpteen times, and so this will give them the option. And if the city's too expensive, they might have a private contractor in there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion fails. So it's just a motion to receive no fee for service on McGuire Beach Road. Okay, we'll move down to the last extraction, which is 8320. Requirement to connect to municipal services review. Councillor Dunn, your extraction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, with the setup here, we don't have the alternatives on this agenda. I can dig it up, but if it's handy there, I can. But I am going to say alternative 1 again, and let me just make sure I got the right agenda here, because I am ready for this. Except for it's a computer and it never works the way it's supposed to. So whichever one of us can get there the first. I'm slow. They're all numbers. Hold on, back to agenda. That'll be the quickest way. There. Okay, so, and the amendment would, alternative 1 be adopted. And what that is that until time of hookup, there is no charge for mandatory costs. And if I get a seconder again, I will, because I got some potential for answering things that were brought up at the last meeting, and I'll explain my motion.
So just for clarification, alternative 1 is that the mandatory connect bylaw remains in place, but there'll be no fee. They're obligated to connect when their system fails, but no fee in the meantime.
That's right.
Okay?
Okay.
So that's what you're moving. Second by Councillor Yeo. Go ahead.
Okay, now, this is the alternative motion. This is the, because although it's not presented as such, there are 3 alternatives. There's status quo, there's taking the mandatory connection fee away completely, or finding some sort of compromise and saying, you still have to hook up, but you don't have to hook up until system failure. With the latest direction from the Committee of the Whole, they're talking about dropping it to $50. Now, to put that into perspective, $50 is $30 savings. It's not a major savings. It's now, if we agree well, what we're doing is wrong, which is what I believe generated the motion to reduce the fee. If we agree that's wrong, then it's wrong regardless of what the cost is. If it's wrong at $87, it's wrong at $50, and it's wrong at $1. So I think the motion should stand on its merit until they're forced to hook up. So then we move the argument. Into saying, well, and of course I broached the subject that natural gas running by your house, because we have the authority to make laws, we can do whatever we want. Natural gas gets, but so it was pointed out natural gas gets subsidies, and they're absolutely right. Natural gas does get subsidies. They get subsidies from us. We subsidize natural gas for the cost of their taxes for 10 years. So we're subsidizing natural gas, a large company, but we won't subsidize our own people. Now, $50 a month per person will have no dramatic, it's a matter of pennies on a monthly bill. It's a matter of pennies on what we save. Now, anytime we misuse our authority, and I honestly believe we're misusing our authority. Back in the 30s and 40s, they talked about the guys with the crooked noses. And they would say, you know, I'll protect your house if you pay me a fee. And if you don't pay me your fee, your house is going to probably burn down. And what we're saying is, you pay me a fee, otherwise I'll take your house off you. And that's exactly what we're doing, because if they don't pay the fee, it goes on their taxes. If they don't pay their taxes, eventually we're going to take their house. For me, it's extortion. It's absolutely morally wrong to do this. I think we should adopt this alternative. We're talking 134 people here. That's what we're talking. You know, and for me, it's wrong. I think we have an opportunity. The nice thing about having a committee, a whole meeting, and then waiting 2 or 3 weeks, you have a chance to actually think about it and recognize when you make a mistake. We've made a mistake by not granting them this break. And by granting it now, the problem goes away. This problem is going to come back month after month until we finally come up with a good, logical, clean decision on how to help these people out, and I hope you support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo, you seconded it. You want to speak to it?
I just want to say I agree 100% with the councillor and everything he just said. Thank you.
Thank you. Except for the extortion part. Councillor Elmsley, go ahead.
At the risk of being an extortionist, I think there is still services available when water is in front of your house. Our other alternative, of course, which wasn't explored, is that we support our bylaw and say, okay, we'll throw the whole thing out and we'll force everybody to hook up. And that's not acceptable to me, because I don't think we should be forcing people to hook up unless they're in a position where our service is going to be better than their service. If their well fails, if their septic fails, it's going to cost them a lot more, probably, to drill a new well or to put in a new septic than it would be to hook up. The water run by the house, it goes to the fire hydrants. It is there for them. There is a cost to that. I think that we need to maintain some sort of cost structure for the people who can hook up but choose not to. I do agree that I don't like to charge people for services they don't get, but in this instance, I think that we are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and reducing the amount that they're paying, I think, gives them a break, but it also still provides some revenues for the city to maintain those services. So I won't be supporting the first alternative. I will support what came out of Committee of the Whole. Thank you.
So you're speaking against this motion on the floor. Thank you. Councillor Riley?
Well, it's just kind of along the same lines. I support the committee. I think we came to a compromise, in my opinion, on the Committee of the Whole, because I think, as said, the services do go by. There's all kinds of things that aren't fair in life. We had area rating since amalgamation. Lots of people don't agree with that. There's lots of areas that aren't black and white and gray, and some people get services, some people pay for services that they don't get as well. So that's not a perfect science. It's like myself paying education tax, not having a family. That's my, you know, I chose not to have a family. I went to school, but I have other properties to pay education tax on. That isn't fair in some people's eyes. So anyways, in my opinion, I like the motion we had from Committee of the Whole. That's the one that I would be supporting.
Thank you. I can't support the motion either. I see it as we're trying to almost a type of selective taxation. It's, you know, we have lots of examples. We charge people for roads. Not everybody has a car. Everybody has to pitch in for roads. Residents don't use arenas, but they can't opt out of paying their share to keep our buildings up and going. Transit is a great example in Lindsay. We have Lindsay Transit. That goes on everybody's area rated to Lindsay. It goes on everybody's tax bill. They have the option of using that service, but they choose not to, but they're still helping to subsidize it. And I just, you know, I'm in favor of the compromise. I'm fine with that. I think that's a good compromise. I think, you know, we can go back and forth on this and we can all try to put our spin on it, on how we should or how you shouldn't, but at the end of the day, you can't start, you know, there are situations where you can't do selective taxing, which I think is what this is, what we're proposing here. We just need to round it out, and it's one of those things that we need to put to bed and sort of move on, and it is an option those residents have a choice to tie into if they wish to, but we can't offer that service. We offer that service with a lot of different services that we have here in the city, so I can't support the motion. Is there any other comments? I'll ask you to sum up. Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I agree with you 100%. Let's put it on the tax bill, because that's what everyone says. Your education, your roads, your arenas, it's on the tax bill. We're not forcing anybody to hook up to anything. It's on the tax bill. You want to put water on the tax bill? I'm there all day long. But this isn't water, or this isn't the tax bill. This is saying, after you built your house, we ran water by your place, and now you have to hook up, or if you don't hook up, you have to pay us, and if you don't pay us, we're going to take your house off you. That's the difference. This, you know, so education, we live in a universal system. My kids are grown and gone. I still pay education taxes. You know, I still pay for arenas. Well, actually, I've still got one down there playing. But I have, you know, another couple of years he won't be playing there. You know, but I have no issue with taxes, because taxes are spread out amongst everybody equally. We're forcing people to pay for something that they didn't ask for, that wasn't available to them when they built their house, that wasn't there, and we're forcing them to pay for something that they don't want and don't need, and I think it's wrong. So please support the motion.
Did you had mentioned at Committee of the Whole a recorded vote? Did you want a recorded vote? Okay, requested by Councillor Dunn. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Dunn? Councillor O'Reilly? Councillor Seymour Fagan?
Opposed.
Councillor Yeo?
In favor?
Councillor Richardson?
Opposed.
Councillor Ashmore?
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Elmsley?
Opposed.
Councillor Vale?
Opposed.
Mayor Letham?
Opposed. 6 opposed, 3 in favor. Motion fails. Councillor Elmsley, do you want to move the original request as printed?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor O'Reilly, you'll second that? Do you want to speak to it? No? Good. Call the question. All in favor? Recorded vote requested by Councillor Dunn. Everybody's clear on the motion? This is the compromise at the reduced fixed cost rate that went through at Committee of the Whole. Go ahead.
Councillor Yeo?
Opposed.
Councillor O'Reilly? Councillor Vale?
In favor.
Councillor Dunn? Councillor Richardson?
In favor.
Councillor Ashmore,
Opposed?
Deputy Mayor Elmsley,
In favor.
Councillor Seymour Fagan,
Favor.
Mayor Latham.
In favor. 6 in favor, 3 opposed, motion passes. Okay, that's the last extraction from committee of the whole. Let's, follow-up motion, Councillor Vale, go ahead. Sorry.
Just a follow-up motion, if I get a seconder, I'll speak to it. I'd just like to make a motion requesting that staff bring forward a costing report of what it would look like if we were to look after helping some of these individuals hook onto the system by taking the services to the property line.
So costing to take the services to the property line?
Yep.
And report back from staff? Can we do Q1, just to get us through budget and everything? It's a long-term proposal. Okay, Councillor Elmsley, you'll second that? Go ahead.
Okay, so I think it's pretty simple, right? As we've been looking at this and we've been talking about it, one of the hindrances besides waiting for systems to fail is the actual cost and where they have to hook on to the service, directional drilling underneath our roads and everything else, right? It's quite clear that, you know, we don't go on to other people's property and do work and expect to them to pay for it, right? So I just I struggle with that we expect them to pay on our property, the roads, the allowances and everything, plus the fact that we want these people on the system, right? So I'd just be curious what that would look like to take the services to the property line and then have them take it from the property line to their home.
So probably the scenario would involve just a few different situations, the other side of the road, under a road, property line, so a couple of variants. Councillor Elmsley, do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, just briefly. I think we discussed it before, and there are some properties who aren't hooked up where I believe the stops are to the property line, and then there are others where it's not. And I think where we're constructing a road and replacing services or putting services in, at that time bringing it to the property lines would make a lot of sense as well. So seeing what the implications of that are, and with charging for those people who aren't hooked up, and I know the $50 a month might not pay for it, but if you collected it over 10 years, it may help offset the cost of doing it. So I think there's a good rationale for doing it. So I'd like to
Get
see
some
those.
numbers toward it
Yeah.
anyways. Director, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, a couple things. First one is that request has been made previously by Deputy Mayor Elmsley, and staff are working in the background on consideration of what would be the feasibility of the city installing the laterals to the property line and the implications of that. I've mentioned before that there are some concerns over that benefiting party and that resident is the only benefiting party, so it's almost a form of bonusing to install lateral, but a report will be coming forward on that. With respect to the prior resolution, with respect to the fees, we need to amend the bylaw, so we will bring back a subsequent report, but we're looking for direction from council as to when that structure would take place. The preference would be come January 1, 2020, but we need some direction from council as to when that fee structure would change.
Okay, let's deal with this motion first. So there's a report coming back already, but we can just add this sort of to it and you'll bring it Q1 2020 works for a timing perspective. Are there any other questions on that? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. So this fee, changing the fee structure makes sense the beginning of the year, January 2020. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. So you got it? You can just add that in somewhere. We're good. Okay. Is that how it works, right? Just plug it in. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and deal with the rest of them. Thanks. Okay, we're at item 9, the Planning Advisory Committee. Are there any extractions from the Planning Advisory Committee minutes of September 11th, 2019? Seeing none, Councillor O'Reilly, would you move the minutes? Planning Advisory Committee meeting be received and the recommendations included in section 9.3 of the agenda be adopted. Actually, you weren't here, were you? Yeah, that's what I meant. You were here for this one? Okay. So you'll move that. Councillor Vail, you'll second that? Thank you. Any questions, comments, all in favor? That's passed. Thank you. We'll move over to the consent agenda. Item 10. So we have extractions from the consent agenda. 10.1.9, the early start approval for the 2020 phase of downtown Lindsay reconstruction. I've extracted that just for some clarity and some information. 10.1.11 is a request by all into storage for deferral of development charges. I've extracted that. And 10.1.12, Housing First, Intensive Case Management. It's just a report, but I think Councillor Dunn's extracted it, and I think there's a little bit of conversation we should have about that one, so you're okay continuing to extract that? Thank you. Are there any other extractions from the consent agenda? Councillor Seymour Fagan?
11.2.
11.2?
The petition.
We'll do that individually. That's not part of the consent, so this is just 10. So if you're anything from the consent agenda, so seeing nothing, Councillor Seymour Fagan, I think you have the list.
Okay. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Elmsley that all proposed resolutions shown in section 10.1 and 10.2 of the agenda be approved and adopted by council in the order that they appear on the agenda and sequentially numbered, save and except for 10.1.9, 10.1.11, and 10.1.12.
Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? That's passed. 10.1.9 is the early start approval for the 2020 phase of downtown Lindsay reconstruction. I've extracted it. I have no issues with the recommendation, the early start, the proposal. I've asked the CAO to just give us some clarity on the process and the strategy for bringing this forward, just so that we sort of know that we're not going to come back a month from now in budget and say, we didn't know that when we approved that at early start. So I'll just ask Mr. Taylor to clarify.
Sure, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess first for clarification, I mean, it is a standard process at times where we will bring forward annually early start requests where it makes sense, where there's multi-year projects, or where there's some, I'll say, competitive advantages, if you will. In this case, you're only going to see one early start request for 2020. It's this project, and it's very clearly stated in the report, basically to get ahead of the multi-year program that's downtown and to take advantage of some early tendering, which we really think will pay some big dividends by getting ahead of it. The reason I think the mayor sort of was flagging it, or my understanding, was that I had mentioned, or it was mentioned through our budget conversations last week, that we may have some decisions to make in terms of projects within our 2020 capital budget. And because this was such a large project, relatively speaking, wanted to make sure that there was clarity for you, council, that this early start approval wouldn't prejudice your overall sort of planning for 2020, that in my opinion at least, you're well into this project in terms of a multi-year phasing. And again, happy to answer any questions with respect to this particular project, but you're not going to see any other early start requests. All others will come through the capital budget process, which gets published at the end of October, and then we have deliberations that occur that month.
Thank you for that. Can I get a motion for the as printed, and then we'll have a discussion about it if you wish? Councillor Riley? Councillor Vail? Do you want to speak to it?
Just briefly, I understand, as Ron has said there, the only thing I was saying, if this was to go forward, maybe through to one, with a project of this size, would you be going out to other, I know we have typically 3 or 4 contractors that work in our community. Would we be going to people like along the Lakeshore or Toronto on a project like this to try and get better pricing? Like an invite?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we publish all our tenders on bids and tenders, and we advise several different construction associations as well. So one is the Durham Heavy Contractors Association and the Simcoe Berry Heavy Contractors Association and the Peterborough one. So they're all aware of this. We could reach out more and go into Toronto, but most of the contractors are based in Markham, Richmond Hill, Vaughan area, so they're going to pick them up anyways. But we could do more advertising to make sure we capture those larger contractors.
That's fine. And you're in the business. I just thought hoping those projects of this size that some bigger contractors probably would apply, because some of the smaller ones probably won't, I would think.
Thank you. Councillor Vail, do you want to speak to it? You second it? No? Councillor Elmsley had a question?
Do, Mr. Mayor, and I'm not being funny about this, it's an actual question. Are any of the buildings, houses, units not connected to water and sewer in this area? Because I have a couple in downtown Fenland that aren't connected.
I'm not sure what relevance that has to this
Well, I'm
early
just
start,
thinking
report.
Well, I'm just thinking that if we approve this, and given that we're waiting for a report back on bringing the services to the property line, if there were people in this geographic area who weren't hooked up, should we be looking at bringing the services to their property lines? So I don't know if there are anybody who's not hooked up.
Don't know. Ask the director. Go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm not familiar if any of the homes or any of the businesses or any of the buildings through that area are not hooked up. Part of my concern with installing those laterals to the property line, if we don't have a timeline for connection, if that lateral is going to sit there for 15, 20 years and not be connected, it's a potential leak, it's a potential water quality issue, and it's a challenge from an operational perspective to install those laterals and not connect. If any of those property owners are interested in connecting that aren't connected, absolutely, it makes total 100% sense to combine that capital works with the installation of the lateral and the connection to the property at the same time. So that's part of the discussion that we'll be having within that report, is that from an operational perspective at least, it doesn't make sense to install those laterals with no plans for use, because they're just effectively a giant liability for the municipality.
So I think they're two separate issues that, we haven't made a decision as council that we're going to do that. But if they're reaching out to any property owner, say now's the time to do it while we're digging up the road, right? So from a cost perspective.
That was my point, that we should check while we're doing the work, while we've got the road dug up.
Agree? Yep, thank you. Councillor Ashmore.
Just a couple of questions through you two, Director. To be proactive in this is what we're doing. And would we be doing like core drilling drilling, because we ran into some issues here with Peel Street, and pretty expensive. We found out there was hazardous materials underneath, and that had to account for a lot more money being put into it. Would we be doing, by starting this early start, are we going to be being proactive that way and preventing any of this sort of thing, and we have to come back and get more funds to finish the job?
He wouldn't dare.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so this week, we are doing a series of test holes on Kent Street. I think they're starting tomorrow. So we're doing a series of about 30 or 40 test holes, along with chemical analysis to delineate any soil conditions. We're also looking at various different dump sites to dispose of any salt contaminated material. So that will be done well ahead of the tender. We anticipate the tender to be released early to mid-November of this year, with construction starting in February of next year.
Okay, so the final question, this is through you to Finance Director Stover. Any question's a good question, but I just have a question on area rating. And I know and I'm pretty sure I've got the answer, but I'm not 100%, but we get our money from capital budget. Is any of this area rated when you do construction in downtown Lindsay? I assume that's not the case, but is it all capital tax supported?
Any capital projects are
well, not any, this particular capital project is attributed to the general levy.
And the water and wastewater portion is obviously attributed to the water and wastewater users, so not area rated, but specific users budget, right? Okay. You got a comment, Juan?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarity, this is within the BIA area. The BIA does have some assets in downtown, such as benches, flower pots, banners, that is not part of this budget. They would be either replacing it or maintaining status quo, and they have an area rating or a tax for the BIA specifically for those assets.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have the motion as printed. All in favor? That's passed. We'll move into our next extraction is 10-111, the request by all into storage for deferral of development charges. As per the policy, the motion from staff was just to receive. I would suggest, if somebody wants to move it, that we receive it and that we offer the deferral. We did for a previous fellow that was here for storage units, so I'm not sure why we would do one and not the other. Councillor Dunn, you'll move that. Councillor Elmsley, you'll second that. And if you're, just so everybody's clear that it be received and that notwithstanding the council policy, the site plan agreement for storage unit development proposed at 74 Colburn Street East, Lindsay by all into storage, as outlined in the appendix, provide for the deferral of development charges whereby the development charges are made payable on the second anniversary of the site plan agreement and are determined in accordance with the applicable development charge rates in effect at time of payment. So as printed. Any comments? Do you want to speak to it, or any comments or questions? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. And the last one is 10-112, the Housing First intensive case management was extracted by Councillor Dunn, myself. We were both going to extract it for discussion. Did you have anything you wanted to bring up? It's just to receive, so
Yeah,
I remove that it be received, and then we'll have a discussion?
Sure, that's good.
Okay, and a seconder, Councillor Seymour Fagan, go ahead.
I initially had questions that revolved around 68 Lindsay Street North. This particular program doesn't address that. It's different units. I've had a discussion with the director, and they're working at it, and they'll have further information down the road. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Well, for me, it was just, I don't know if anybody has any questions. It's a pretty detailed statistical report that they've put forward. It's not, it's making all sorts of recommendations, but that's from the report, from the study, I guess. I just wanted, this is a tie-in to 68 Lindsay Street. I mean, this is really tying into that first Housing First initiative that they're talking about. There's a correlation with our development on Lindsay Street. I mean, that's what it is basically, or a big part of this. So I just wanted to connect the two, because there's a lot of questions about the Lindsay Street development. And can you just offer a little bit of clarity on that, Director?
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. So this specific evaluation was based on an evaluation done by Trent University on the intensive case management approach that was initially implemented for scattered units. So people living throughout, primarily in Lindsay, but I don't think it was restricted to Lindsay, in terms of what benefits happened over the 3-year period of those intensive case management positions. This specific evaluation, and those people were not associated with the new residents. The model of the intensive case management positions and the work that they do is it's virtually the same as the work that is being done at 68 Lindsay Street for those tenants. But this evaluation is from the previous period of time and with a different group. So in essence, the same, it could be extrapolated that similar outcomes will happen through that model. But this specific evaluation by Trent was around that scattered model. But in terms of the work being done and the staff is supporting the tenants, is very closely aligned.
Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the director. I recognize that bringing 24 people together all at one time from challenging backgrounds is a challenge for us. So my question to the director is, not so much is there a light at the end of the tunnel, but have we found the tunnel yet? Do we feel like we're starting to make some progress in integrating our people together as a family? Because I honestly believe that as time goes on, we'll build a community there. Like that's what I believe, and I'm just wondering if we're making any progress.
Through Mr. Mayor, I would say yes. There is work more done directly through the Housing Corporation, as Housing Corporation is the managing the building, is the landlord there. I would say there is progress with everybody in terms of, as with the office just moving in, there's a period of settling in for anybody based on this particular model on the residences, based on where people are coming from in terms of their own situations, their complex needs, vulnerable situation, bringing people together in any type of situation to a closely co-located situation area in terms of new environment. It's a learning curve for everybody, for them in terms of getting used to that community, but we are definitely seeing in terms of that community coming together.
Thank you, Director. I guess my only recommendation is that in the future, when we decide to go into another one of these types of projects, that probably if we make it less big, integration will be quicker. 24 for me was a really ambitious number, and I think that's maybe part of the issue. Probably something in that 12 to 15 range would be a little easier to integrate. It's just a recommendation from the background. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor O'Reilly?
No, Councillor Dunn kind of asked my question in that community as we've heard things going around. An organization like Forecast, is it basically, I don't realize they worked with Scattered before, is their role going to be different in this organization? With the housing project down there, I realize a place called Home's also involved, but how would you see that playing out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the support services available to the tenants in that building, as they are in other buildings, are varied and work together. There are Forecast staff embedded in the building in terms of the office space within there, so it's directly available, accessible to make those connections more readily.
Councillor Ashmore?
You too, Director. I'm struggling with this here. There was the word integration that was brought up here. Councillor Dunn had said this, and I just wanted to clarify the staff's approach. Is it housing first and then rehabilitation second, or can it not be rehabilitation first and then housing second? Because we're seeing that a lot of these projects are being located right in populated areas. Has there been any thought of locating them in industrial areas in Lindsay, so we don't have this friction between the neighborhoods and we have the fear that people have because of certain elements that are in these particular facilities?
Mr. Mayor.
My question is, we've obviously got some problems in some housing areas, and this is a new problem that we have. It's not a new problem, but it's something that the people are, and I don't represent Lindsay. I don't mean to tread on anybody's territory here, but what I'm saying is that, well, what I read is that they say housing first and then we'll rehabilitate you next. But people are really upset that it should be rehabilitation first and then housing because it's causing so much problems. And I'm just here to say that we engage in all these sociologists and professors, but I think we're doing it the wrong way around. I think people should be rehabilitated first before they take on brand new housing and puts all through the community through all this stress.
Okay, go ahead, Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the using one of the terms that's used is housing first, but not only housing. It is not putting people housing and leaving them. There are supports there. There's expectations of working towards that with the harm reduction model. It is an evidence-based model. There's documentation, there's evidence, there's healthcare evidence that it's based on. That was information presented to Council for the original model. It's the evidence that supports it in the healthcare field. That's what we've based the model on, and I believe that the evidence supports. It is it's not necessarily one that from the public standpoint, they're seeing that. But again, we base it on the history, the evidence, and the healthcare expertise. In terms of the location, I want to say it is a residential building. We're not looking at isolating the concept of community housing overall, whether it be affordable housing. Community housing, supportive housing, is to assist people in integrating part of the community, social inclusion as opposed to exclusion. So housing is always looked at how it becomes part of the community. These, in this building and other buildings that we have across the Kawartha Lakes and Halliburton, are residents of the community now. They've been residents for some time and are being supported through this particular model. So we always look at it on how to integrate people most closely to the services as opposed to excluding them.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn?
Just to help out a bit, housing or lack of housing is one of the greatest triggers for crisis. If we can resolve the housing crisis first, that's the first major step into resolving the rest of the problems. And you know, it is scientific. It works. Once you take that off, then you worry about feeding them. You know, and but once you take those two big critical items off the table, rehabilitation is truly accessible. The reason why downtown is, as opposed to industrial areas, is that's where the services are. And quite frankly, that's where they are. That's where their friends are, and their social life revolves around the downtowns. Because you know, and if you put them out in the country, you'll have a nice quiet development because you won't have any clients. So you're keeping them close to their home, and I'm nervous about this program because it's so big, but I honestly believe that it will work, and I think social services is on the right track. I really do.
Yeah, and I think these are discussions we can have as these projects come forward to council for approval. What's the model? What are we doing? And, you know, we can look at them all individually. We don't want to lump them all together. Did you have a follow-up question, Councillor Ashmore?
Comment. Well, I'll just give an example in Omimi. Like, I don't know when it was changed, but we had seniors housing at one time on James Street, but it was changed. And it's attracted a different element there. And I'm just, you know, the people there have asked me, you know, like, why do we make these changes? I just think that when we have seniors housing, we should keep it as seniors housing. And, you know, it's just, we've got to be careful when we go forward with this new approach here that we've got in front of us.
Thank you. We have a motion to receive. All in favor? That's passed. We'll move into item 11, which is petitions. We have a petition regarding the resurfacing of Hillview Drive and Slalom Drive in Bethany from Olivia Bryant. Can I suggest we receive and refer this petition to our 5-year roads plan? Would that be appropriate? Somebody? Councillor Richardson, you'll move that? Thank you. Second, Councillor Elmsley. Any questions, comments? All in favor? It's passed. We have another petition, 11.2, regarding renovations and repairs to Baseline Road in Copaconk from Janet Porter. Can I suggest we receive and refer to our current life cycle extension program? The residents are aware it's already included in that. They were working on the petition earlier in the year. We just told them just continue, we'll get it on record, and then we have it, but it is included in this year's budget for some repairs. So will you move that, Councillor Seymour Fagan? Second by Councillor Yeo. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Bylaws, are there any extractions? Seeing none. Councillor Vail, you have bylaws by consent.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Richardson, that the bylaws shown in section 13.1 of the agenda, namely items 13.1.1, 2 and including 13.1.6, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, numbered, signed, and the corporate seal attached.
Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. Item 14 is notice of motion. We have none. We need to move into closed session. So we'll take a few minutes. We'll let the cameras clear out and any of our spectators, and then we'll come back and go into. I guess what we should do is adopt the closed session agenda first. Councillor Yeo, you've got that.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dunn that the closed session agenda be adopted as circulated with the following amendment. Addition item 15.3.4, Report LGL 2019-004,